Will Thailand deport a refugee footballer to Bahrain? His plight, spanning 3 countries, has sparked an international campaign involving governments, activists and the football world, all demanding his immediate release. This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Martine. Now, the future of a refugee football player is hanging in the balance as his extradition case plays out between 3 countries. Hakeem Al Araibi is crying for help to stop his deportation from Thailand to Bahrain because he fears he'll be tortured there.
Kill all the people from Shia Muslim. Please save me, please.
The 25-year-old appeared in court in Bangkok, shackled in chains. Judges adjourned his case until April and denied bail despite international appeals for his freedom. The former member of Bahrain's national team was arrested in November whilst on honeymoon in Thailand. Al Araibi fled to Australia from Bahrain 5 years ago because, he says, a 10-year sentence for vandalism was politically motivated.
As I said, this goes beyond football, this goes beyond sport. And FIFA, together with the Olympic movement, have expressed very strongly that Hakeem should be released. And also, we believe that this imperils athletes who do very highly visible jobs because they train and they travel all over the world. We cannot have a situation where an athlete is in a country like Thailand and they are arbitrarily detained. That cannot happen. And I think international sport has to be really forceful in its condemnation of Bahrain and Thailand in terms of the way they've conducted themselves. And as I said, this is in breach of international law, it's in breach of Hakeem's internationally recognised human rights.
More now from Al Jazeera's Scott Heidler, who was there at court.
The extradition hearing at the criminal court here in Bangkok on Monday morning heard directly from Hakeem. The judge asked him specifically, directly, do you want to be sent back to Bahrain? He said no, because if he goes back, he said, he'd face severe punishment. We also found out of this hearing that the legal team for Hakeem will have 60 days to get together documents and evidence fighting this extradition. The next session will be on April 22nd. Out front of the courthouse, there were representatives from the Australian embassy. He has refugee status in Australia. He was given that in 2017. Human rights groups were out front, as well as sporting groups, in particular football associations, out front of this courthouse here in Bangkok on Monday. Now, they have all been gathered and pushing forward a global initiative to free Hakeem. Now, this is something that's been going on for weeks because he's been here, held here in Thailand for 70 days. Now, obviously, that international effort really hasn't had much impact on Thai officials because they're pushing forward with this process. And again, the next hearing will be on April 22nd.
Well, his case is being compared to that of a young Saudi woman who faced a similar dilemma in Thailand just last month. Rahaf Al-Qanoon fled the kingdom, saying she was abused by her family for breaking social codes in Saudi Arabia. The 18-year-old received a huge following on social media and made the headlines when she barricaded herself in her hotel room in Bangkok to stop her deportation. The UN eventually stepped in and Canada offered to take her as a refugee. All right, let's introduce our guests now. In Bangkok, we have Phil Robertson, Deputy Director of the Asia Division at Human Rights Watch. Also in Bangkok, via Skype, we have Craig Foster, former captain of the Australian football team, who's been leading the campaign for Hakeem's release. And in Copenhagen, we have Maryam Al-Khawaja. She's the acting president of the Bahrain Centre for Human Rights. Welcome to you all. But Craig, can I start with you? You obviously feel very, very strongly about Hakeem's case. Why?
Firstly, he's a football player. Secondly, he's a refugee who's under Australia's protection. And there's some question marks around the Australian government's participation in this, around the Interpol Red Notice. Of course, it should never have gone on him anyway, as against their regulations. But as a former player, we feel, our playing community in Australia, that if we don't stand up for him, he's in very real trouble. Secondly, is because this is so much about football politics and the sordid politics of the game, particularly around the AFC president who was implicated back in 2011-12 in the incarceration and torture of
all right.
Hakeem.
Let me stop you there, Craig, because I think we need to unpack this just a little bit. Keep it as simple as possible. When you're talking about the president of the Asia Football Confederation, we're talking about a Bahraini who has since recused himself from this case because clearly there's a conflict of interest. That's what you're referring to, yes?
Yes, indeed. And under the new human rights policy of FIFA and AFC and every federation, including the Thai, Bahraini and Australian, there are very strong obligations on all football officials to promote and protect the human rights of everyone in and through the game. Of course, that includes Hakeem. The president did not do so for around 60 days, after which he then tried to recuse himself and patently to try and delegate the responsibility to uphold the basic human rights of a player to someone else in the organisation on the basis of a conflict of interest is simply not acceptable.
All right, let's go to Maryam in Copenhagen. Maryam, what do you fear would happen to Hakeem should he be deported and repatriated to Bahrain?
I think especially because we've seen Hakeem speak specifically about Sheikh Salman, who we just mentioned in the interview. I think that puts him at great risk of being of retribution, of being subjected to torture again, like he was back when he was held in Bahrain. And this is something that is not it's not an exception for Bahraini prison systems, unfortunately. My father has been in prison. I have several family members in prison.
Right, but Mary, I mean, the Bahraini government are saying that this is a man who's been tried in absentia, admittedly, but has been tried and found guilty of vandalism, acts of vandalism, particularly regarding a police station. So this is a criminal act.
Well, generally speaking, I think Human Rights Watch said it best when they said in Bahrain you don't have a dysfunctional justice system, but rather a highly functional injustice system. And I think Hakeem's case is pretty clear-cut. There was evidence that was submitted by his lawyers to a court where the presiding judge is a member of the ruling family. And the video proved that Hakeem was playing a televised match in a different place at the time of the alleged crime that he was being accused of. And the judge refused to take a look at the evidence. He just dismissed it. And so we're looking at a situation where it's very clear-cut that even within Bahrain's own system, where justice has absolutely nothing to do with the judiciary system, that was a pretty clear-cut case because there was a very astounding evidence of Hakeem's innocence, and yet it was not considered by the judge.
All right. And Phil, also in Bangkok, what is the situation of Thailand? Thailand doesn't seem to be recognising Hakeem's status as a refugee accepted by Australia.
Yeah, that's profoundly concerning. There are many refugees who travel to Thailand on refugee papers like Hakeem's from around the world. And, you know, this is one of the reasons I think that we saw so many diplomats at the court today. Over 15 countries were represented there. That this is now a matter of major international concern, not only for Hakeem as a football player and a person who is a refugee, but also for the larger system of refugee protection, which Thailand is threatening to violate in a very fundamental way.
But has Thailand
that cannot be allowed.
Has Thailand signed up to the? Has Thailand signed up to the relevant aspects of humanitarian law, the Refugee Convention, for instance?
Well, no, but Thailand has ratified the International Convention Against Torture. In an Article 3 of International Convention Against Torture, it states that no one can be sent back to a country to which they would be tortured. Hakeem has already been tortured in Bahrain's jails, and if he was sent back, he would be tortured again. It would be a clear violation of Thailand's obligations under the International Convention Against Torture to send him back. Moreover, it would be a clear violation of international customary law that no one who is a refugee shall be refouleed to Bahrain, to any other country where they would be fled from persecution. You know, it's not a deportation, it's not an extradition, this is a refoulement, and this is barred by international human rights law in a very clear way. And Thailand is basically saying that they're going to tear up the human rights, the UN Refugee Convention and their obligations as a country that has ratified various different human rights treaties by sending him back. And that's just simply unacceptable.
All right. And Craig, earlier you mentioned the role of the Australian government. The Foreign Minister has been in touch, we understand, with the relevant authorities in Bangkok. And in fact, the acting ambassador of Australia has been at court, as Phil was mentioning. Do you think that the Australian government should be doing more?
Well, just last week, the Australian Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, elevated the issue and wrote directly to General Pryor here in Bangkok. So too did Fatma Samura from FIFA, of course, and Thomas Bach, the president of IOC, and none of those people have received a response. So clearly this relationship between Thailand and Bahrain exceeds that of this government and Australia, whether that's through trade or otherwise. Let's
talk now to Maryam in Copenhagen. And given your knowledge of the situation in Bahrain, explain for us why Hakeem is appealing specifically to fellow Shia to try and help him out of this situation that he finds himself in now.
Well, I'm not sure why that specifically. I think generally in Bahrain there has been a feeling by the population that they have been forgotten by the world. And generally the kind of support that has been received has been by other Shia populations around the world. And so I think that that's probably where the appeal comes from, is from that feeling of being forgotten for the Bahraini population, who has now for 8 years continued to protest, continued to criticize the government, and have been slammed down. And unfortunately, now, especially now with the Trump administration, the Bahraini government has been emboldened, and so the situation has actually gotten much worse.
All right. And Phil, coming back to you in Bangkok. Now, without wanting to get too technical, isn't it a matter of the charges being levelled, having been levelled against Hakeem, are of a criminal nature? And that is what the Thai government says is what allows it to pursue with the legal process. It's not political charges, these are criminal charges against him, or a criminal conviction, I should say.
These charges are bogus. The conviction was politically manufactured. The Bahrain courts are kangaroo courts. This is a joke. Let's be clear about what's going on here. Hakeem was playing a football match. The red notice said that there was a conspiratorial meeting at 6 in the evening. That was at the time he was actually with his teammates. There is a videotape of him playing football. There is statements by his teammates saying that he was with them. There are statements by the team itself saying he was with them. The amount between the time that the football match ended and when the attack was alleged to have taken place in the red, according to the red notice, there simply was not enough time to actually go there. These charges are garbage. So, this is a joke.
All right,
that the Bahrain government is trying to perpetrate on the international community.
So why is the Thai government, why are the Thai authorities then prepared to take this case and put it through its legal system?
That is an excellent question that we have not been able to discover the answer to. My view is that the Thai government is only now starting to see the global opposition to this move. I think they were stunned to see so many diplomats. I think they were surprised to see the FIFA representative fly in from Switzerland. They're starting to realize that they're on the short end of a much larger campaign that is going to continue to grow from this point forward. And Thailand should essentially cut its losses. It should state that, okay, sorry, we're going to send him back to Australia. We respect refugee status, and end it right now. The Prime Minister has the authority to do so. That has been confirmed by the Attorney General's office. Let's stop playing games with this travesty of justice. Let's send Hakeem home right now.
All right. Craig, we've been talking quite a lot here on Inside Story about the combination of sport and politics. Again, we seem to have another case, don't we? And as Phil was saying, FIFA has got involved at quite a high level, as well as the regional footballing bodies.
Yes, and this is a seminal test for this new policy of FIFA. IOC do have one. It's not quite as strong as that of FIFA. And it must be upheld. And Hakeem's welfare, immediate and medium term, is the greatest test that it's faced. And currently it's failing miserably. FIFA weren't doing enough. Just as of a week ago, we rushed over to see FIFA and urged them to escalate to emergency status, which they did. They wanted to see progress last week, and I think even FIFA have been surprised, as has the Australian government and others, at the lack of response from the Thai government and Prime Minister. So they need to do more. We're calling now for sporting sanctions. What that means is, patently within Thailand, and we'd say Bahrain, they're a key stakeholder as well here, certainly refugee players, and we don't know, other types of players are unsafe, and they cannot guarantee the safety of players coming in to play in Thailand. Therefore, FIFA should step up now and bar Thailand from playing any international games, whether that's national team or their clubs in the Asian Champions League, within Thailand, and make them play in a neutral country. We'd say that's the next step in order to impress on the Thai government that membership of international sport carries obligations to treat the athletes and the players well.
Maryam, what do we know then about the relationship between Thailand or the Thai government and the Bahraini government?
Well, I know that there are, I'm pretty sure that there are strong economic relations between the Gulf. You have to remember, when we talk about Bahrain, we can't talk about Bahrain individually, because the Thai government knows that their relationship with Bahrain also is influenced by their relationship with the Gulf as a whole. Of course, excluding Qatar at this point. But that means that when the Thai government is not on the good side of the Bahraini government, can also influence their economic deals and their economic relationships with the rest of the Gulf. And so I think that's a big part of it, because if you look back a few years ago, another Bahraini was extradited from Thailand. He was also someone who was a torture survivor, and he was extradited forcefully from Thailand back to Bahrain. Unfortunately, that case did not get international attention. I think the only reason that Hakeem has not been extradited already back to Bahrain is because his case has gotten international attention, and because people like Craig and others have done such a great job at highlighting his case in the international media and to the international community.
And Craig, how is this issue of Hakeem being played out in Australia? Because from a distance, it seems very much to many of us that Australians don't have a huge amount of sympathy for those who are displaced by conflict and by other conditions. So, I mean, how do ordinary Australians feel about Hakeem?
Yeah, that's a really good point you make, and many have made it throughout that, look, you know, we're fighting so hard for just one player, one footballer, when, you know, we have our own issues with people arriving and seeking asylum in Australia, and that's something that we certainly be taking up, you know, following this case. But as we keep saying, let's just save one person, and once we can save Hakeem, we can turn our mind to other issues that we have as a nation. There's immense support here. Australia, of course, is a big sporting nation, and I think that also helps. The football community has come out very strongly, and we've also urged this whole concept of not just refugee safety through travel, but also that this is a seminal test for sport and for sport governance. You know, we talked before about Sheikh Salman and also Prince Nasser, who was also implicated along with Salman back in 2011-12 in this committee that they put together that has been on record in The Guardian and other articles about identifying and incarcerating around 150 athletes. And these two members of the royal family have now gravitated to immense positions of influence within both the Olympic and football movement.
Right, okay.
And this is a huge...
All right, but these are allegations, of course, that we at Al Jazeera, we can't verify at all. So I don't want to dwell on those too much. But coming to Phil, do you think that the pressure that is being exerted by the sporting bodies, by the diplomatic community, do you think that they will yield what many people seem to want, and that is Hakeem to be returned to Australia in order to resume his football career?
I do, but I think it's going to require a lot of work. And unfortunately, I think that Thailand is going to have to recognize that if they send Hakeem back to Bahrain, if they refool him back there as a refugee and violate his rights in that way, that they're going to face a major impact on Thailand's football future. Thailand wants to be the joint host with Indonesia and ASEAN of the 2034 World Cup. If they do this, they may have to consider that again. FIFA also has the authority to decide who plays in the World Cup. So Bahrain and Thailand, if they send Hakeem back, you know, may be at risk at getting, you know, basically a red card to sit down and sit out the tournament. You know, many different clubs in Europe may decide that because Hakeem has been sent back, it's not safe for their players to come here. So clubs like Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, the major clubs that are strongly supported in the Premier League by Thai fans may have to start deciding that, hey, we're going to play our exhibition matches somewhere else. Thailand's government is going to have to answer to the football fans of Thailand if any of these scenarios come to pass.
And Maryam, do you have much hope then that this pressure, primarily then coming from the authorities of sport, in particular football, are you optimistic that that will yield the results that you want and let Hakeem go back to Australia?
Well, I think right now with the kind of pressure we're seeing, there is some optimism, especially because, as I mentioned, if it hadn't been for this pressure that we're already seeing, I have no doubt in my mind Hakeem would have been sent back already. I think the fact that he's still in Thailand and has not already been extradited is because of the international pressure that's happening and because of the international attention that Hakeem's case has gotten. And I think one of the things that's really important for us to remember is that when Hakeem was being tortured in Bahrain, one of the things that the torturers said to him when they focused on beating him on his legs was that they were going to make sure that he will never play football again and that they will destroy his dreams. And so I think this is something that is important for us to remember when thinking about what Hakeem faces should he be extradited back to Bahrain.
And do you think that perhaps too much fuss is being made about one individual Bahraini who has been through an awful lot, it must be said, but do you think too much fuss is being made about Hakeem where there are so many others in need perhaps of world attention?
I think that every individual matters. I think that it's extremely problematic when we start talking numbers and not people. And so I think that every case deserves the attention that Hakeem's case is getting. And so I'm glad that Hakeem's case is getting this attention. I hope that Hakeem's case helps shed light on the thousands of other prisoners that we have in Bahrain, many of whom are still being subjected to mistreatment and torture. And I hope that, things turn out well for Hakeem, even if they haven't for so many others in my country, in Bahrain.
And Phil, we started the programme and we made mention of Rahaf Al-Kanoun, of course, the Saudi young woman, the 18-year-old, who had a fairly traumatic experience in Thailand before she was eventually accepted by Canada. The Thai authorities then, I think I'm right in saying, actually said that they wouldn't be prepared to send people unwillingly, involuntarily to their countries of origin. I think that was the head of the Immigration Service saying that after the case of Rahaf. What's gone wrong?
Well, it was Surachate Hakpan, the head of the Immigration Service, who said that. He said that at the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand. And now we're expecting him to fulfill those words, fulfill that promise, that refugees will not be sent back into harm's way. They'll not be sent back to authoritarian governments like Bahrain to be imprisoned and tortured like Hakeem would face. And that we expect Thailand to, do the right thing here and to return him to his family, return him to the Pascoe Vale Football Club in Melbourne where he plays, and return him to the community in Australia who have advocated so strongly for his release. I think that Thailand is really sort of on the precipice here. They could go in a very wrong way down a road which would bring ruin to Thai football and to Thai human rights, or they could do the right thing, agree with the international community that Hakeem is a refugee and send him back home. And we hope that Surachate Hakpan and we hope that Prayut Chan-o-cha, the Prime Minister of Thailand, will recognize that this is a clear choice and make the right choice and send Hakeem home.
And Craig, we've already outlined some of the things that the Australian government is doing. What exactly do you want the Australian government to do now to perhaps try and ensure that Hakeem is released from prison in Thailand?
Well, it's imperative that they now communicate even more strongly to the Prime Minister of Thailand the importance that they place on this. He was given protection by Australia, as has been said so many times here. And so this is really a test of Australia's strength and, the protection that they want to provide, not just for Hakeem, but for everyone else. So we'd like to see the Prime Minister escalate the issue again, whether that means a visit here to see the Prime Minister in the next few weeks. He certainly needs to step up the advocacy. People in Australia are talking about tourism, boycotts and all sorts of things. This is a cause that so many Australians and much of the country has really taken to heart now, and Thailand need to really understand that this is affecting negatively our bilateral relationship and that our government is taking this extremely seriously. All
right. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you to our our guests, Phil Robertson in Bangkok, Craig Foster also in Bangkok, and Maryam Al-Khawaja in Copenhagen. Thank you all very much indeed for taking us through this topic today here on Inside Story. Now, thank you, of course, as ever, for watching the programme. You can see it again anytime you like by going to the website, aljazeera.com. If you want further discussion, as I'm sure you will, you can go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. I'm @Martine Dennis, and from me and the whole team here in Doha, it's bye for now.